And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our trip into MovieBob's own private Vietnam. Let us continue. So, where we last left off, I think he was rambling on about his,
Daybreak for
something
most
about
of my
his
time
life.
between the Blockbuster #2 and Best Buy years of employment. Part of my regular schedule included weekend nighttime hangouts with my Suncoast originating group of friends, which almost always involved playing some video games. Halo and Halo 2 on the Xbox were the games of choice at first. Not my favorite thing, but shooting is fun. But soon it was discovered that the GameCube Mario Party titles and Super Smash Bros. Melee were better compatible with half-drunken revelry. But as much as I enjoyed them in that context, I didn't rush out to get my own copies. It was something I did over those guys' house. What it did spur me to do was start paying more attention to my own games department and spend more time browsing gaming sites online and game stores during mall walks. And it was during one such jaunt of casual browsing that something extraordinary caught my eye. Boxes labeled NES Classics, with vintage-style cover art advertising that they contained direct ports of NES-era games for the Game Boy Advance. Their presence made me smile, but by then I'd gotten used to the idea of Golden Age ports on new systems.
Who the fuck
What
calls
I
it
saw
the
next
Golden
time,
Age other than this
would have been
asshole?
just an honest-to-God spit take had I been drinking anything at the time. A Game Boy Advance, Advance SP. If you want to be technical,
I have an
about it,
Advance
paid
SP.
and
That was like the
designed to
best
resemble an
console
NES.
ever.
I had to have it. Impulsive, yes, but I was unable to resist the opportunity to carry the good old days in my pocket. Now I needed games. What I'd managed to miss during my break was that, while Mario and the rest of the Nintendo menagerie had slipped from the top shelves of the console scene, their power and influence had grown 1,000-fold in the realm of handhelds.
Who the fuck
The Game
talks
Boy
like
had run the
this?
show effectively unchallenged for so many cycles that it still had potency in the age of Nintendo's newer handheld, the DS, and game stores were filled with low-priced GB and GBA games.
How could he not know about the GBA? The GBA was a masterpiece. There's so many good GBA games.
Was awash in continuations of my beloved 8 and 16-bit eras. And there were Mario games, lots of Mario games. Re-releases of the classics, the two LAN titles I still had from before, and even Mario and Luigi, Superstar
I mean, this
Saga,
guy,
which played like an even more satirical.
he kind of reminds me a bit of DSP. Like DSP missed like 20 years of gaming because he was playing Street Fighter 2 for 20 years. Like, let me think of some classics on the on the GBA. We got Tactics Ogre Knight of Lotus. We got the Fire Emblem games, all three of them, although only two were available in North America. You have three great Castlevania games. You have the Mega Man Battle Network series. You got a lot of good RPGs. Nintendo portable consoles have always had amazing libraries. Whenever Nintendo kind of lets down their more adult fan base on the more console side of things, they always have amazing content for their portables. But he didn't know that because he's retarded.
Mario RPG. GBA,
Pokemon games that do.
Was my constant companion, really useful for passing time sitting in the car after work, waiting for the rest of the house to go to sleep before heading home. I promise that last part isn't actually as sad as it.
Golden Sun. What the fuck does... Okay, let me just... Sorry, guys. I just have to stop sometimes. Okay. My GBA and soon my DS was a constant companion, particularly useful for passing time sitting in the car after work, waiting for the rest of the house to go to sleep before heading home. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? Like, so he like waited in his car because his parents like were so ashamed of him they didn't want to see him come in after being a blockbuster. I don't even know what that means. Let's re-listen to this.
The two LAN titles I still had from before, even Mario and Luigi, Superstar Saga, which played like an even more satirical follow-up to Super Mario RPG. GBA, and soon enough a DS, was my constant companion, particularly useful for passing time sitting in the car after work, waiting for the rest of the house to go to sleep before heading home. I promise that last part isn't actually as sad as it sounds. You see, around the same time I had picked up another hobby, making silly videos on the internet. I'd acquired some basic editing software with a new camcorder at one point, and had gotten reasonably good at using it in my college film classes. Those days were the Wild West for web video. Connections just fast
He
enough
sounds
to make it
so much
workable.
like your
Legality just
father,
slow enough to make things wide
or
open.
some
I put
other.
together, scratched my film
I don't know. He
making
sounds
itch.
like
The
some
second
kind
movie
of
project with
person
my
too
blockbuster
who
had blown up in my
is
face
talking
somehow,
about
so I
something
still
like
live in my
back in the
home, and the only times I could have enough
1920s.
quiet and computer access to actually make use of it was when everyone else had hit the sack. I was getting pretty good at cutting together silly mock trailers, but I had far greater amusement watching the more polished shows other guys were putting out. James Rolfe, another aspiring movie maker, was transforming into an internet
Don't
age
bring
celebrity
James
as the
Rolfe
angry
into this.
Nintendo nerd almost overnight, establishing excitable generals or rants about obscure stuff from his childhood as the most popular web video genre going. A few years later, a British-born Australian gamer named Yahtzee Croshaw became overnight the first superstar video game.
Fuck
critic with his
Yahtzee.
hilarious,
Yahtzee was
insightful,
shit.
and
And is
mercilessly
shit.
objective animated review show Zero Punctuation was picked up by an online game magazine called The Escapist. I'd like to say that I saw my future then struck by visions of a new path forward by a beam of sunlight down from heaven. But the truth is, I didn't have the slightest inkling that I might have stumbled into a useful career.
A useful career?
Thus far,
Nothing about his
useless
career has been
multimedia and
useful.
film studies degrees in my gradually reawakening video game fixation. My mind was focused elsewhere, both at work and at play. I'd come back to Mario and Nintendo fandom, but as a nostalgia infusion, something to keep on the memory shelf of He-Man and Little League trophies. And then, something started to stir. What's old is new, as it turned out. I wasn't the only generation NES 20-something using Nintendo handhelds to reconnect with the burgeoning retro scene. Publishers were seeing the numbers. Alongside re-releases, new games cast in the old-school style started to fill up the shelves.
This is like just so long and so pointless. When are we gonna get to like Super Mario Brothers 3? When are we gonna get to it?
Almost a decade, excluding the Wario Land sub-franchise, and even those releases had slowed to a crawl, would be 2005 Super Princess Peach, which, as the title implies, took the long overdue step of having Princess Peach do the fighting herself to rescue.
I actually
Mario
like
and
Super
Luigi.
Princess Peach.
Then, 1 year later, the man
Maybe I'm
who
like the
returned.
only person who
New
liked
Super
it, but I
Mario
actually
Brothers used
did. Maybe because it was
sprites and
easy
upgraded the
and I
similar
suck at
technology employed by
platformers.
Donkey Kong Country on the SNES, and bumped the character models up to their present-day incarnations, but otherwise represented a back-to-basics approach, a classic side-scroller model primarily on SMB1. Linear levels, mushroom flower star power-ups, though the mushrooms now came in extra small and significantly bigger varieties, and Bowser castles at the end of each level to conquer. And while it might not have blown the minds of longtime devotees, see below, it more than succeeded.
Yeah,
in its
I
goal
like
of
Super
both original
Princess
fans
Peach
and
was
newbies to
fine.
come up on the re-releases and
I
modern
like
Nintendo
I like
Super
some of the.
once
I'm just
new
not very good at
and
the
the
Mario
sales spoke
games.
for
Like I have
themselves. It
new
was one
Super
of the
Mario
biggest
Brothers.
hits ever released
I'm
for
just
NES.
not good at
In all
platformers.
honesty, when judged against the rest of the series, NSMB probably falls in the average zone. It's a solid game. How could it not be? With Nintendo EAD, the company's top-tier in-house development outfit, having had about 20 years to perfect the formula. But I'll admit to feeling a small tinge of that's it. Upon first playing through, it may have been an issue of expectations.
The part of him almost the part about him almost committing suicide over finding out that Mario wasn't from Brooklyn is amazing.
That is me hoping for something that picked up where World and Yoshi's Island left off, whereas Nintendo was looking to polish up the original Diamond. But if you'd told me that this amusing, glossy revival game signaled the beginning of a full-fledged rebirth for Mario and Nintendo, I would have written it off as wishful thinking. I would have been wrong. Revolution, my reborn gaming habit, had been focused almost exclusively on handhelds, so I hadn't been paying much attention outside of work to the console scene. I knew the Xbox 360 and PS3 were en route and set to mock up the HD DVD Blu-ray war that was already making a
Wasn't
mess of
this book
and I knew
called
that
Brick
Nintendo
by
had a new
Brick?
console codenamed Revolution
Wasn't this
would
supposed
rival
to be a
everyone in the
frame-by-frame
front,
analysis
leading
of
Mario
Super
and
Mario
Zelda
Brothers
game.
3?
Otherwise, Nintendo
We
consoles
haven't
were
gotten
upset.
to it. He's just
Nothing
doing
was
his
focused
life
on especially
story.
since,
This
as
is
late
like
as
a
2005,
DSP
they still
video.
hadn't settled on a name
Like
for
in a
the
DS,
game.
every
They
DSP
reinvented
video,
gameplay
he
in
always
some
tells
refined
his
way.
entire life
Reinvented
story,
gameplay turned out to be
even when it's
motion
not
system controller. Introduced
important.
as the Wii remote around the same time, we learned that the final system would be called the Nintendo Wii. It had become customary, routine even, for new game consoles to primarily...
Okay, I have a confession. I used to be a real Nintendo fanboy, so I used to say to people, "Long live the revolution," in response to the Wii. The Wii was very disappointing, although I love Twilight Princess.
Their numbers, size of onboard memory, speed of processor, size of chips and boards, etc. But the Wii came out touting unique features like consoles used to do back in the days of blast processing and triple buttons. Along with motion controls, Nintendo was touting the Mii's mini avatars of the
Okay,
player.
my issue with this is this feels so fake. This feels like your father, like your 50-year-old father who's never played a video game before, is like did a little research and is trying to write a fake memoir on like what he did during the 90s and 2000s. Like this whole thing is just so contrived. Who talks like this? Who the fuck talks like this?
That could be inserted into games, and a virtual console for downloading older classic games, both things considered routine now but quietly revolutionary at the time. The mainstream of gaming culture, of course, turned up its noses. Silly gimmicks. Nintendo was weary and out of touch. They didn't know how to compete in the modern gaming market. The system itself was graphically underpowered, and the motion sensing gimmick was
No,
a
it was
tactile
the Wii
to
was
make it
shit.
appear worth owning. How could it be anything else when the remote, resembling an Apple-esque version of an NES
The
controller with
GameCube was a
on its
lot
side,
better,
was
I'm
so clearly
sorry.
not designed for the multiplayer, online first-person shooters that had become the only game genre that mattered over the previous half-decade. This was the consensus, expressed loudly in the gamer culture and in more muted tones in the gaming press. Of course, the story of not just how wrong but how spectacularly wrong the consensus turned out to be doesn't need to be rehashed here. Traditional game culture was skeptical and resistant to the Wii.
No, but the
when
Wii was a
general
failure.
public got a look at Wii Sports, essentially a pack-in game designed as a tech demo for motion controls. The system was an immediate, massive success. Stock flew from shelves, and customers lined up in droves. The sales numbers climbed so high so quickly it soon became a statistical impossibility that any other machine of that generation would end up selling better.
Yeah, I admit I waited in line with my father to buy the Wii and Twilight Princess. Honestly, I love Twilight Princess so much it was kind of worth getting the Wii just to play it.
Since the debut of the NES 2 decades earlier. As much as hardcore gaming would continue to deny it, all of a sudden Nintendo was back, but not necessarily.
Skyward Sword was like the most disappointing game I'd ever played, though. We aren't going to talk about Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was my own personal Vietnam.
Though it was a major attempt at rebranding, and part of that process seemed to be getting away from their known stature as primarily a delivery system for Mario, Pokemon, and Zelda titles. Wii Sports featured no licensed characters, and while the system did launch with some familiar faces ready to go in the form of Super Paper Mario and Zelda Twilight Princess, the lack of a major Mario title stood out, particularly since the GameCube's Big Mario entry. Sunshine had been received as an admirable but not entirely successful experiment. Was that to be the end, then? Was Mario to go the way of Mickey Mouse, star of the company in name only? Mascot Odysee, relegated to cheerleading for the new stars from the sidelines.
I'm a huge GameCube fan.
Their grandparents,
I did a video a while back where I showed off my games. I own most of the good games for GameCube. I don't have a couple of them. I don't have Eternal Darkness, same as Requiem though. But it's like $1 billion to get that.
Fairly plausible to me, and filled me with a sense of impending ironic dread. Nintendo makes the big comeback I'd wanted for them, but wind up in a form that in no way resembled my memory of them. And with no Mario, it would, I imagined, fit my luck at that time. I was wrong. To the stars, one of the quirks that accompanies Shigeru Miyamoto's position as an elder statesman of game development is that he holds the prioritization of interface, read, gameplay, above any other aspect of the process. No matter how much graphics improve, or how much the industry and the audience comes to prize narrative or visual innovation, one gets the distinct sense that he generally doesn't want to do a game, even one star in
No, I don't know the answer to that question.
To try some new technique or fresh idea in the process. His penchant for canceling
Bane Kato's 1 and 2, Tales of Symphonia, Mario Sunshine, which I didn't really like because I'm bad at it.
Spaceship combat title from his own honeymoon and told them to change the game's power-up mechanism to diving under arches and to make the lead character an anthropomorphic cartoon fox. His reasoning? He had just wed in a traditional Shinto ceremony, which involves passing beneath an arched walkway en route to standing before a statue of the fox-like god Amaterasu. The finished game, Star Fox, would become a bestseller and kick off yet another beloved franchise from Nintendo. In the time that the Wii was still only in the planning stages of becoming a console sales juggernaut.
Okay, the two most disappointing moments. Okay, the three most disappointing moments of my life. Okay, the third most disappointing was Command & Conquer 3, which we aren't going to talk about. The second was Command & Conquer 4, which I was expecting to be shit, but was still a disappointment. The most disappointing thing of my life was Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was like the biggest disappointment in my life. Sunshine was good. I just am not good at it. That's kind of my issue. It's like I don't dislike it. I'm just not good at it.
Miyamoto's new fancy was to create a 3D platformer where manipulating and negotiating shifting forces of gravity was the main obstacle to completing levels and solving puzzles. And so it was decided that Mario would now travel to outer space. The space-bound setting of Super Mario Galaxy may have started out as a way to visually and narratively explain Miyamoto's desire for gravity-fixated physics, but it turned out to be an ingenious way around what had become the nagging problem of platforming in 3D. The jump and dodge gameplay that had defined the majority of the Mario series existed because hurdles and chasms were the only forms of geographic obstacle one could place on a path that could only be traversed from left or right. But being able to move in all directions through fully realized
Okay, when I put these together, I'm gonna edit in a disclaimer at the front where he explains that this is not a history of Mario, this is not his life story, and this is not a history of Nintendo.
Science fiction that it was by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince, with Mario traversing comically planetoids and hitching a ride on shooting stars. Galaxy allowed the series to evolve into a kind of absolute extreme version of the platforming ideal. Mario leaps from platform to platform above a literal black abyss on a path that is almost always fairly linear, even if such straightforwardness is cleverly hidden.
Okay, I can't take this. Okay, let's skip ahead until something happens. Okay. The Calling. What the fuck is The Calling?
The Calling in 2008, I was spending a lot of time online, re-engaged with a gaming community that in many ways not only didn't resemble the one I recall but seemed openly hostile to it, a mirror image that hated its own original subject. A feeling of inclusiveness that I remembered, perhaps in rose-colored exaggeration, born from gaming culture and nerd culture having originated as one and the same and thus sympathetic to misfits and the socially oppressed, had been replaced by a culture bullying, a crude, cruel horde dedicated to shunning not only the old iconography of gaming but any attempt to build a new one beyond the borders of the online multiplayer military shooter culture that had come to dominate. Whereas I'd recall the culture that flaunted its own pseudo-multiculturalism given the sheer volume of the medium that came from the alien culture of Japan, I now found a rabidly xenophobic culture that would not only happily purge the weird Eastern influences of the past but also resisted the injection of any perspective that didn't align with that of a heterosexual middle-class male. I was told, in feverish, excited terms, that gaming had matured.
Okay, people are talking in the chat about Skyward Sword being open world. The issue was it wasn't. I mean, Wind Waker was actually sandbox. Sandbox was like completely open world.
Of course, this culture despised the Wii.
Wind Waker was great though. I love Wind Waker. People are so mean about it. So are we going through the entire thing? Yeah, I'm going through the entire thing. Are you kidding? This is a complete fucking Let's Endure. I'm going through this whole fucking book. I have been editing stuff out. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I have been. So, okay, let's see here.
I ended up dumping my frustrations with what the medium and its public face had become, crystallized by the reveal that the lead of the rebooting Bionic Commando franchise was to be transformed into yet another scowling, stubble-bearded look of a Wolverine knockoff, into a YouTube video about the declining standard of character design in games. I wound up titling it Game Over Thinker, Episode 1, a matter of character at the end, when I got a vague sense that I wound up having more to say and could maybe turn this into a series.
This series was shit.
More episodes, which earned a tiny but loyal following on the tubes, but never did I entertain any series.
I actually don't think his movie reviews are that bad.
Boy, that'd be cool though, huh? Thoughts on the
I kind of like MovieBob's movie reviews, to be perfectly honest.
Link to the original to ScrewAttack.com, the Texas-based site that had famously discovered Rolf's AVGN series. Enough time went by that I honestly forgot that I'd even sent it until one day I noticed that the viewer numbers had exploded all at once on YouTube. ScrewAttack had posted the first.
ScrewAttack is so fucking lame, I can't even believe it. Remember game trailers, anyone? Remember that amazing stuff?
My videos were being posted to blogs and feeds across the web, and all at once the Game Over Thinker went from being one of my hobbies to being a thing I was now in charge of. Suddenly fame, even of a type I wasn't really able to monetize in any way, was quite a thing, but I could not have been prepared for what happened next. Out of the blue, I got an email from Escapist.com, the games journalism outfit that had discovered zero punctuation. They'd seen my stuff on YouTube. I'd started posting movie reviews as well, just for fun, and wanted me to do it. At first, I thought they'd be looking to pick up Game Over Thinker, but it turned out they were actually looking to expand their horizons. They wanted a film critic. Holy shit. After a few test runs to iron out the kinks, I officially joined the team as the Escapist movie critic, hosting my own series Escape to the Movies. In the exact same time period, Screw Attack offered me the chance to enter Overthinker in an audience voting competition to
Does
become an
anybody
official part
care
of
about
Escape.
Screw
I won,
Attack?
and the
Has
partnership
anyone
endures
cared
to this
about
day.
Screw Attack
Both
for
of these
years?
developments could not have come at a better time. In my real work life, I'd finally surrendered to take on a soul-sucking data entry job. Grim irony, my assignment was to process the employee termination paperwork of various large corporations. That job didn't last. I was fired for, frankly, not being very good at it, and I segued off into another part-time retail job, working the cappuccino.
So this asshole got like a degree in film production. He sucked at school. MovieBob has talked about wanting to like carry out genetics programs to get rid of. He wants to carry out genetics programs to get rid of low IQ people. When he was a fucking disaster when he was in school, as he said earlier, and he got a degree in a useless subject, and he spent the last 10 years at this point in time working at Blockbuster and Best Buy, and now doing a shitty data entry job. Like, these are... like... Just trying to think how to describe it. These are things people should be doing in their early 20s maybe. This is what people should be doing before they get an actual career. This guy was making no efforts to get a career. He's just such a fucking loser.
Borders books. But now I had a real career to build on the side and hopefully.
And I don't mean a loser because he wasn't successful, but because he never tried.
Game culture commentator. Screw Attack even flew me down to Texas to speak at their big convention, along with web superstars like James AVG and Rolf, Noah Spooney Antweiler, and Brent Offloss. Was this really happening? Peace in our time. I wasn't the only one going through the end of an era and an exciting new beginning. The so-called console wars that had in part created the once problematic identity which Nintendo had now re-embraced the thunderous success, the Disney of video...
Peace in our time. What the fuck? This guy is such a narcissistic douchebag. Explaining the so-called console wars that in part created the once problematic identity of which Nintendo has now re-embraced to thunderous success, the Disney of video games. However, their history witnessed the war managed to absolve. He thinks it's literally his personal Vietnam.
And gamers, even fans who would have been too young or not have witnessed the war have managed to absorb, through pop cultural osmosis, the idea that for some reason Sonic the Hedgehog and the Super Mario Brothers were enemies, or, at the very least, they weren't friends. In 2007, this last cultural remnant of the console wars was put to rest. Gamers may have dreamed of seeing Mario and Sonic team up, or fight, in some kind of grand game devoted solely to that event, perhaps a mix and match of their respective game styles, but whatever anyone had in mind, few could have predicted the out-of-the-blue announcement in 2007 of a Mario-Sonic crossover in the
Okay, who gave a shit about Mario and Sonic at the Olympics?
Mario and Sonic
it was like the lowest of the low, cheap-ass cash-ins. I would never look at that shit. It's obviously a gimmick. It's not a real video game.
Might have deserved in the eyes of many. That would come later. Now that's more like it. Nicely characterized.
The climax of an iconic rivalry might not have deserved.
And everyone else in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the reinstallment of the mascot fighting game that had become one of Nintendo's biggest series in the GameCube era. In addition to its famous multiplayer mode, Brawl featured a single-player story mode that placed the game's roster of classic characters in a side-scrolling platformer adventure through what could only be called an orgy of...
I like the Subspace Emissary.
In the final moments of the game, when players face off against a mysterious fighter...
Didn't they not have a campaign mode in what was the new one even called? Is it just Super Smash Brothers? There's not even a thing at the end of it?
Space Emissary was close to a religious experience for me in general. Link meets Yoshi, our Obi Storm.
What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Oh my god. What the fuck? Okay, I gotta read this. This is like the craziest fucking shit I've ever seen. Okay, let's see here. To say that playing the Subspace Emissary was close to a religious experience for me in general, Link meets Yoshi, Rob Stormtroopers, Kirby blowing up Bowser and Ganondorf's giant space cannon would be to putting it mildly. But even after seeing Mario and Sonic together in a real game and to be able to fight one another, no less, felt more like real, genuine closure than it had any right to feel for a real grown man. What the fuck?
In the final moments of the game, when players face off against a mysterious final villain named Tibio, none other than Sonic the Hedgehog appears out of nowhere to mortally wound the enemy and unlock himself as a playable character and allow for the story to conclude. To say that playing through Subspace Emissary was close to a religious experience for me in general, Link meets Yoshi, ROB Stormtroopers, Kirby blowing up Bowser and Ganondorf's giant space cannon, would be putting it mildly. But even after that, seeing Mario and Sonic together in a real game and able to fight one another, no less, felt more
like he has no insight. Like there's
thus at long last ended.
There's zero passion here. There's zero like interest here. Like, does this man sound? I understand I'm putting it through a board voice synthesizer. Does this man sound like he was excited? Does this man sound like he gave a shit about this at all? This whole thing is just some fucking post-hoc story he wrote after the fact to try to make it look like his life was more exciting than it was. Like, there's no emotion here. There's no feeling here.
The rivalry of Mario and Sonic, one-time enemies of the Golden Age, now united as avatars of said age as it fights against its own fading and thus far keeps winning. The next level, and so we come to the present, or at least close enough. In 2000...
Oh my god. Thus at last the long rivalry of Mario and Sonic, one-time enemies of the Golden Age, now united as avatars of said age, to fight against its own fate, and thus far keep winning. The Golden Age to him is like the hardcore gaming season to DSP. The super extreme Golden Age hardcore gaming season. The next level.
The next level, and so we at least close enough. In 2009, Nintendo released New Super Mario Bros. Wii, a console-sized update of the NSMB formula from handhelds with one key difference: 1 to 4 player cooperative multiplayer.
Well, he doesn't have any friends, so multiplayer doesn't matter.
A symbolic gesture, a fusion of the Wii's party gaming soul with Golden Age nostalgia, Nintendo and Mario's two audiences made one. Sure, there were some quibbles to be had. It's kind of lame that players 3 and 4 have to be a pair of palette swap Toads rather than the two princesses, or even Toad and Toadette. But it was a marked improvement over its DS predecessor in challenge and polish, and it featured the return of not only Yoshi but the Koopalings too.
Who the fuck are the Koopalings?
In fact, playing it got me through what felt very much like an intermittently over-stressful holiday season that you and I sort of figured that was that. Retro platformers, after all, were a niche genre, especially on consoles. But then everyone else bought it. Everyone. In a turn that I would love to have seen coming, NSMBWII turned out to be one of the biggest releases ever on the system. It wasn't just retro gamers and nostalgic fanboys buying it, it was kids, parents, families. The side-scrolling Super Mario Bros. Formula was as addictive as ever, and now its new multiplayer form had pulled a whole new generation, and their parents and grandparents, evidently, into the fold. All told, it sold well over 10 million units, becoming the fastest-selling single console game in history. After all this time, my old friend, and the form in which he was almost most comfortable, was still the gold standard. Deservedly so. In the wake of NSMBWII's success, the Mario merchandise market exploded in a way it never had when I was young enough to have justifiably gorged upon it. High-quality Mario toys are a common sight all over, and I won't pretend I don't have a few choices decorating...
Okay, that's actually the first interesting thing he said. Yeah, I notice nowadays if you want to get like a plushie or a statue or like Mario or Link or something, like you can get that now, but back in the day, getting any kind of like video game themed stuff at a major store was difficult.
My home right now. Oh, speaking of homes, as Mario was settling back onto his throne, things were turning around for me as well. My hard work for the Escapist and Screw Attack had started to pay off in numbers that allowed me to quit my retail work entirely and devote even more time to my criticism and video making. I'm now what's called an e-celebrity, of sorts, though
now it's an
still
lol
feels
kind of
strange to me.
sorts.
At any moment, I expect someone to leap from the shadows and cry that man is no professional commentator.
He is a fraud.
I speak on panels at PAX East. I went to Seattle for the Independent Game Developers Conference. I trekked to North Carolina for the Escapist debut expo. And I'm now making plans to head back to Texas for Screw Attack's Revive convention. I even made enough money, sustainably, to finally move out of my family's house into a place of my own. A life transition that spurred me to buckle down and write the playthrough portion of this book. So, it's not just a retrospective of Super Mario Bros. 3.
So this guy went to college for a useless degree, then he spent the next, 12 years doing minimum wage work in his parents' basement. Now, once again, I understand a lot. I understand more than just about anybody else. It's really hard to get a job. It's really hard to get into the industry. It's hard to keep a job. It's hard to keep up with it. The modern workplace is a disaster. It's a dumpster fire. If Bob was having trouble, I can understand it could take that long. I don't think that was the case. I think he's a lazy fuck with no ambition or drive who just wanted to leech off of his parents.
Record of my last time playing it from start to finish in the home where I played it for the first time. Moving into a home of my own, well, an in-law apartment in Revere, technically, was a mindly chaotic experience. Not in the least because Evangeline, Vange, my beloved last living grandparent, passed away only a few days before my move was scheduled. I was determined...
Who the fuck calls their grandmother Vag? That's fucking disgusting. If my grandparents ever called my wife Vag, I would fucking smack them.
Not to draw the process out, to get as much of my gear, particularly my bed and the video making equipment for what were by now 4 to 5 separate web shows, installed in the new place as possible on the first day, which ultimately led to a set of nice sleepless days worth of furniture assembly, shelf construction, equipment testing, and general new life building. Part of it meant frequently heading back home to dig out as many usable items as I could from my closets and drawers. I found a lot of subtly useful random items, extension cords, USB cables, twist ties, batteries, but also a lot of lost keepsakes to take with me because, well, you know, during one such plunge, I retrieved a set of large...
This dude literally just wrote a page of him building furniture. This is like a fucking DSP vlog in text form.
But not very heavy boxes, and felt a powerful sense of what they contained before opening a single one. But open them I did, and inside I found my childhood, the games. My games.
He never left his
everything that had survived from my
his
early
childhood.
Gaming, stacks of NES, some N64, and Dreamcast games, plus the corresponding consoles, controllers, and other equipment. At the very bottom, in true dramatic fashion, was my original NES, a little faded for the wear, but otherwise as immediately recognizable as the day I'd first hooked it up. In a separate...
Isn't this supposed to be an analysis of Super Mario Bros. 3? Let me just look this book up while we're talking about
that the
this.
magazine would cease publication for good came only a few months later. Issue number 1 now hangs, framed, on my wall. But the games I resolved immediately that those devices would live again, and immediately put the rest of my homemaking on hold while I set about doing just that. With the half-constructed skeletons of seemingly more important accoutrements of living leaned against walls, their construction on hold, I spent a night cleaning cartridges and connections with rubbing alcohol and Q-tips and a day teaching myself how to disassemble an NES to replace its connector pins.
Okay, I want to read the description for this. More than a strategy guide, bigger than a retrospective, a whole look at one of the greatest games of all time, film critic and game journalist Bob Chipman attempts the most in-depth analysis ever of his all-time favorite game, Super Mario Bros. 3. The book chronicles his own most recent journey through every step of the game, missteps and all, while analyzing every element of this enduring NES classic, from level design to visuals to music, to its unforgettable characters for their artistic, cultural, and even historical significance. He also details the history of the Super Mario franchise itself, his own experiences growing up gaming, and many of the life-changing events that surrounded and shaped this most recent quest to save the Mushroom Kingdom. This isn't the most recent game, but so it's like a second thing. I don't want to get too angry at him if it's self-published, because I'll probably self-publish my book.
And other machines did not, thankfully, require that level of repair. I tested every game and afterwards played Super Mario Bros. 3 on my original NES, and just like that.
Okay, I want to take a vote in the chat. Do you guys want me to do this for My Twisted World?
HD follow-up to the Wii, once again based around a new type of...
Because My Twisted World is fucking amazing. I've read it before.
The system's launch, a major event, given that it's
And no, there's no one to claim copyright on that because he shot himself. So I could literally just call it annotated read-through of it.
Versatility of the gamut pad. Good game, even great in spots, but it's not the one they're using to sell the system in ads. No, the task has fallen to New Super Mario Bros. U, which is exactly what it sounds like it is. It's been over 25 years since the original Super Mario Bros. Turned the original Nintendo Entertainment System into a worldwide phenomenon that changed the history of entertainment and my life in particular, and 25 years later, a 2D Super Mario Bros. Side-scroller is carrying the banner for the new generation. Mario is still here, so am I. I'd like to think that, if possible, we would thank one another for that. Epilogue, believe it or not, the Wii U I purchased on launch day was defective. Not great news, but we deal with what we must. I decided that it would be faster to track down a new one than to send it for repairs, and spent the next few days showing up at electronics stores early in the morning hoping they'd been restocked. I eventually won out by joining up with a Black Friday line and, frankly, being...
So, this dude... So this dude bought a Wii U and it was defective, so he bought another Wii U. That's exactly what DSP did for the Switch.
Lucky. However, on one of the non-eventful days I had an encounter that stuck with me and probably will for a while. I was standing in the November cold outside of a local Target whose website had listed Wii U as being in stock. Having worked in retail for so long, I knew that could be misleading. More likely than not, they'd misscanned the pre-orders they were still holding for customers. This was only 2 days post-launch, as general stock. That turned out to be the case, incidentally, but it was still worth a shot. After about 20 minutes of waiting, I was joined by another pair of early birds, a young mother and her 2 children. One was a boy of about 6 or 8, and the other was a toddler whose gender was undeterminable, as she was wrapped in a solid cocoon of winter wear and cradled against their mom's shoulder. I got the sense that we may have been there for the same thing, they likely picking up a pre-order, me hoping there was stock beyond the pre-orders, and I could tell this despite the fact that we only said hello to one another, not by some psychic intuition, I stress, but because the boy was making it pretty clear, he was excitable to the point of bouncing, and his attire told the rest of the tale. Mario t-shirt, Mario baseball cap, Mario backpack, even Mario sneakers.
That's fucking parental abuse that they let them do this.
I looked down at him, smiled, nodded. He looked up at me, realizing, before I did, honestly, that I also happened to be wearing a Mario shirt, one from my era, SMB2 character select screen, to be precise, with a look of quizzical surprise. This big older guy knows Mario too?
This is so fake.
Yes, I do.
He obviously made this up. There's no way that this
I
actually happened.
Part of the phantom stock waiting inside could well have been this kid's pre-order, and between me getting mine and him getting his, he can't have it. Mario belongs to him more than he belongs to me, even if I've known him longer, because Mario, in games, and
Mario's like the fucking will of fire.
That's not to say they can't also be part of an adult life.
Like, Mario's the will of fire that's passed from one generation to another. Like, when Asuma dies and he's like, Shikamaru, I give you my will of fire. I give you the dreams and wishes of those who came before me, and I ask you to give them to my son. Here's my copy of Super Mario Bros. 3.
Possibly have the same grand adventure, and I can only hope that Mario was as good a friend to him as he was to me. And so, in addition to writing this book for myself, for people like me, for game designers and...
Okay, fuck it. Let's just... Okay, here we are. We've made it to the actual fucking game. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry you had to suffer through this. So, we're gonna just fucking quick this shit. Okay, so here we're at the game. This is where it's gonna really get shitty.
Part 3. The game The Basics Super Mario Bros. 3 Inches was developed as a first-party by Nintendo EAD, Entertainment, Analysis and Development, with Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi credited as its primary designers and Koji Kondo as the composer of its score.
Do you think if Miyamoto read this book, he would cry and just say my whole life was wasted because I gave birth to this? Yes, that would make Sonic
All 3
Fedora.
versions were originally published on game cartridges designed to interface with their respective consoles. The story from the original NES game manual, The Mushroom Kingdom has been a peaceful place thanks to the brave deeds of Mario and Luigi. The Mushroom Kingdom forms an entrance to the Mushroom World where all is not well. Bowser has sent his 7 children to make mischief as they please in the normally peaceful Mushroom World. They stole the magic wands.
I just had a thought, if you were going to do a video about reviewing Mario 3 brick by brick, wouldn't that be a Let's Play? like when you record the screen and like talk about it, why would you write a book without pictures analyzing? I don't fucking know.
From each country in the Mushroom World and use them to turn their kings into animals. Mario and Luigi must recover the royal magic wands from Bowser's 7 kids to return the kings to their true forms. Goodbye and good luck, said the princess and Toad as Mario and Luigi set off on their journey deep into the Mushroom World. War and Peace it isn't, but just the basic storylines were par for the course in this era of gaming. Even still, it provides a bigger picture of the Mario universe that had previously been established. This is the first mention that the Mushroom Kingdom is only one part of a larger world, primarily, but it also establishes that the starting point this time around has not quite settled into the Peach always gets kidnapped groove it would in subsequent games. While the princess does indeed wind up abducted at the beginning of World 8, the main story of the game has her in the role of commander, dispatching the Mario brothers to the 7 kingdoms to deal with Bowser's assault. In fact, given that both sides of the conflict are delegating the warfighting to subordinates this time around, SMB3 marks the first clear delineation of the Troopa Mushroom conflict as a long-term military conflict rather than mere isolated attacks by Bowser. Left unmentioned in the written story but implicit in the game itself is that Bowser has amassed a mechanized military force for this particular engagement, outfitting his children with heavily armed airships and protecting his own kingdom with tanks, jets, and battleships. The characters, interestingly, the original manual for SMB3 refers to all sentient creatures in the game, including enemies, as characters. While you'll find a list of said enemy characters further ahead in this section, these are the players whose presence is vital to what exists of the game's narrative. Mario, assuming you haven't skipped ahead to this part, he should be rather familiar to you by now. The main character of the series, Mario, is a plumber, possibly native to Brooklyn, New York, who has traveled to and become a hero in the alternate universe of the Mushroom Kingdom. Depicted in the game, and elsewhere, as a husky-built Italian-American man with a large mustache, wearing a red hat and blue overalls over a red shirt. Luigi, Mario's brother. Luigi is depicted outside the games as being taller than Mario with a slimmer build but appears in the game proper as looking identical save for swapping green for red clothing choices. Princess Peach, also known as Princess Toadstool, the main, though, as of this game, no longer sole, female figure.
Okay, let me just go back. Sorry, I just kind of lost my my train of thought here. I was just looking at Fire Emblem Heroes. I'm sorry, I cheated.
The characters, interestingly,
this book's really boring.
The manual for SMB3 refers to all sentient creatures in the game, including enemies, as characters. While you'll find a list of said enemy characters further ahead in this section, these are the players whose presence is vital to what exists of the game's narrative. Mario, assuming you haven't skipped ahead.
Characters is just the easiest way to say it. I don't know.
To this part, he should be rather familiar to you by now. The main character of the series, Mario, is a plumber, possibly native to Brooklyn, New York, who has traveled to and become a hero in the alternate
fucking Brooklyn, New York,
depicted in the game and elsewhere as a husky-built Italian-American man with a large mustache, wearing a red hat and blue overalls over a red shirt. Luigi, Mario's brother. Luigi is depicted outside the games as being taller than Mario with a slimmer build but appears in the game proper as looking identical save for swapping green for red clothing choices. Princess Peach, also known as Princess Toadstool, the main, though, as of this game, no longer sole, female figure of the Mario franchise. Peach is the ostensible ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom. Depicted in outside game media as sporting long orange hair, she here appears as a brunette in SMB3 owing to the reuse of a sprite from the second game. Prior to 1997's Super Mario 64, Western translations referred to her surname as Toadstool. Toad, Princess Peach's perennial assistant sidekick. Toad is taken to be typical in appearance to the other mushroom people populating the kingdom. In SMB3, such figures appear multiple times throughout the game, though it's not made 100% clear if each appearance is meant to be Toad himself or multiple mushroom persons. Bowser, the principal antagonist of the Mario franchise. Bowser is the leader of a race of antagonistic turtle-like creatures called Koopas, apparently at perpetual war with the Mushroom Kingdom and Princess Peach in particular. Bowser is larger than the rest of his species, with bull-like horns, a mane of red hair and a spike-covered shell. Though he doesn't display propensity for it in this game, he and his children are described elsewhere as magic users in addition to a natural ability for breathing fire. The Koopalings, Bowser 7, later 8, children, mother officially unknown. They bear familial resemblance to their father but have distinguishing features, primarily in the area of hair color and clothing jewelry. Full descriptions of each are included here as part of the playthrough section proper, but their names, Larry, Lemmy, Iggy, Roy, Morton, Ludwig, and Wendy O, are predominantly puns on the names of famous musicians and or celebrities. Version specifics for the purposes of writing this book. The version of the game played was a port of the original NES version downloaded to a Nintendo Wii through the Virtual Console download service. It provides a version identical in graphics and programming to the original NES release, save for the fact that the Wii can be switched off and the game resumed later so long as you exit the game in progress before turning the system off. Otherwise, it is a faithful port of the game's original 1990 US release, played using a Wii remote turned on its side, a style which effectively mimics the basic setup of an NES controller. Basic visual terminology: SMB3 is an 8-bit game, which refers to the programming and space limitations available to the programmers in terms of graphics and sound. The NES and its games were designed to output audio and visuals primarily to the standard definition analog television sets of the day, circa 1989. The game's screen was a grid made up of tiny single-color squares called pixels, which were used to render all of the visual elements in the game. All individual elements and objects made from said pixels are technically called sprites, though, for purposes of clarity, non-moving or non-interactive elements are sometimes referred to separately as scenery or backdrops. Basic game terminology: the sprite controlled by the player, Mario in the context of the single-player analysis, Mario or Luigi.
Mario the sprite controlled by the player, Mario in the context of this single-player analysis, though for purposes of this writing, may alternatively be referred to Mario or as a personification of the player author himself. Sprites representing... Oh my god. Who writes like this?
Is typically called the player, though for purposes of this writing may alternately be referred to as Mario, or as a personification of the player author himself. Read me. Sprites representing creatures meant to serve as living obstacles to the player achieving his goals are enemies. Sprites representing objects that are useful or beneficial to Mario once acquired are called items, while items that cause a beneficial physical change in Mario are separately designated power-ups. Layout: the game is divided into 8 worlds, each containing a set of numbered levels.
Why does he have to tell us this?
Each world is named either for its dominant geographic or aesthetic feature. The names of each world differ from version to version. Here the names associated with the original NES release are used, while each level is identified by the number of its world and then its own numerical designation.
Why does he have to, like, people aren't retarded. They can probably, even if they haven't played the game, they probably understand this. Or just explain this as you're going. I mean, this stuff isn't rocket science.
Actual identity. For example, Level 2, Fortress. Game mode: Super Mario Bros. 3 inches has 3 separate modes of play and or interaction. The main
and or
mode is the actual
interaction?
playing of the levels, see, gameplay, below. And the secondary mode is the map screen, an overhead map of levels and other destinations viewed from overhead that the player uses to navigate from one point to the next. The third, Battle Mode, is accessible only in a 2-player game and is a recreation of the original Mario Bros. Game. Occurs whenever the 2 players occupy the same spot on the map screen and decides which player will take the next turn. The third, Battle Mode, is accessible only in a 2-player game and is a recreation of the original Mario Bros. Game. It occurs whenever one of the players chooses to stop on the other player's spot on the map screen instead of choosing a normal level. Battle Mode allows the players to steal mushroom, flower, and star cards from each other, which are acquired from beating levels. The winner of the match gets the next turn. Gameplay, levels. SMB3's primary gameplay builds on the foundation set down by the original.
Okay, I'd like to ask the chat something. It's nice that I have the chat in the video so people can, like, know what I'm referring to. So, I'm just sorry, I'm just having trouble trying to think of how to, like, even describe this bullshit. Is it understandable that I'm kind of confused by what he's talking about? I don't know. Let's see here. Let me just scroll ahead. No, this is too good. We have to keep reading this.
The very bottom of the game screen is occupied by the status bar, which displays the following information clockwise starting from the top left. The number of the current world, the speed meter, also known as P meter, the number of coins collected, the time remaining of the current play session, the total score, and the remaining number of lives. All interaction is based on the control of Mario or Luigi by the player using an NES controller. Note, in the case of this writing, the game was played using a Wii remote, which is fundamentally analogous to a
know,
NES
you've said
controller.
that multiple
When using
times.
said controller, S, the cross-shaped D-pad controller's horizontal, vertical, and, where applicable, diagonal movement, while the A button, 2 on a Wii remote, Mario to jump. The B button, 1 on a Wii remote, is multifunctional. Holding it down while the right makes Mario run rather
No,
than
like, you can literally
certain
give,
enemies.
like,
Rarely triggers
it's
one
designed
button
for the
to
mass market. You can
contain
give,
shells
like,
and carry
a
them.
3-year-old
In addition,
an
the
like an
assistive
NES
fire
controller, and
protectors
they'll
from
figure
how
it
the
out.
Fire Mario
They'll
or
suck at
Mario.
it,
Holding the down button will
but
make Mario crouch when in his big or super form and is also used to enter pipes, while up is tapped to enter doors. Additionally, the A button is used for swimming, except when using a frog suit, whenever Mario becomes submerged in water above his head, and for flying while using the Raccoon Mario or Tanuki suit power-ups. Within each level, Mario begins, in whichever form he entered from the map screen, with a set amount of time to reach the goal at the end, which is represented by a space of black backdrop. Said goal also contains a block that displays rapidly rotating cards of either a flower, mushroom, or star icon. If Mario collects a matching set of 3 cards, he is rewarded with a fireworks display and a set of extra lives, 1-ups, which we'll get to in a moment. While traveling through levels, the objective is to reach the goal without being killed and sent back to the map screen. Such deaths coming from collision with an enemy projectile, lethal hazard, spikes, lava, or falling into a pit. Death is instant from hits while Mario is in the standard or small form, while most hits taken while super or otherwise.
This dude spent hours, days, weeks, months writing this piece of shit.
Items found inside blocks within levels are exclusively.
How can you explain that to
If
someone?
Mario in a small form,
Like,
power-up will
how
always be a
can
mushroom first.
you imagine
While
like
contents
telling
blocks otherwise
somebody
are fixed to block program to house
that-
a flower will always house a flower, unless it is
I don't
from
even
a small
know.
Mario, in which case it will yield a mushroom. The exception to this rule is the Starman power-up, which can be used by either Small or Super Mario and
The
will occupy
Starman?
designated block
I've never heard
regardless.
that title
Also,
for it
some
before.
levels feature blocks which will produce a Starman only when struck by Mario when he is already
Starman?
using the
What the
previous
fuck is a
Starman. Items
Starman?
found inside treasure chests, whether encountered in levels or otherwise, are sent to the player's map screen item inventory. See below. Gameplay, map screen. The layout of each world and its levels are represented by a map screen, which presents said world in a stylized overhead view of its terrain. Each area, level, and/or scenario that can be entered is represented on the map by an icon, which typically disappear or change shape when they have been explored, used, or cleared. These icons are connected by set paths, the arrangement of which governs the whole of the player's movement on the map.
Calling this a suicide letter or a crime?
A logo when conquered, depending on the location of the level. The status bar for the levels remains at the bottom, but pressing the B button
Okay.
causes the bar to
I
flip over and reveal
can't.
an inventory that stores items and power-ups retrieved from treasure chests.
I can't.
Unlike games of chance, or robbing from
Skip
the
ahead to
house,
the
which
analysis.
inventory, the
But
player can
no,
utilize items
we
on the map
have to
screen
let
itself or
Stamp
on himself for
describe
power-ups
this.
before heading into a level.
We
Map
have
screen
to
elements,
endure
airship,
this
airship
nonsense.
levels. The final level of each of the first 7 worlds start automatically after Mario visits a castle. If he fails to bring the ship down on the first attempt, an icon representing it will become visible on the map and fly to a different location. After each attempt until it is conquered. If it retreats to a path blocked by a previously undefeated level, said level must be beaten first.
Oh my god, boulder, large lumpy rocks. He puts in an explanation. Okay, I can't take this. Okay, I think we get the idea. Let's go down to the analysis. Oh my god, items. Fire flower. Lakidu's cloud. Super leaf. Bricks? Okay, we'll go here. What does he say about blocks and
Blocks,
bricks?
while the terrain and background designs from SMB2 onward are often rendered to disguise this fact, the level layout of the Super Mario Bros. Side-scrollers essentially takes the form of a loose grid, with almost all interactive sprites being measurable in terms of blocks, which are used as the building materials of almost every structure in the game save for the ground terrain. While some blocks are found sitting on the ground, the majority hover in midair. In addition, blocks will often be invisible until struck from below. Whereas the first SMB built its world from only a handful of blocks, SMB3 introduced the greatest variety seen in the series to that point. This game is also the first to allow Mario to directly strike blocks from the side by using...
No, we haven't gone to
detail
the
attacks.
analysis yet.
Bricks, also called brick blocks. In many ways,
Okay,
brick...
no, let me just skip ahead to the actual analysis. Okay, let's see here. Look at this. Look at this. He goes through every type of block. Every type of enemies. Okay, okay, let me just see if I can get to the actual game. Koopa Troopa, Bowser's front, Koopa Paratroopa, Kuberbiz Shoe, Lava Lotus, Nipper. Here we go. Super Mario Bros. 3. Here's his actual analysis. We're actually gonna
In at
get
least one
into
instance,
brick by
there also
brick.
seem to make diagonal moves, but varieties that are unmoored from a single path or space were not seen until Super Mario 64. Venus Fire Trap, a subspecies of piranha plant that spits fireballs, generally at an angle. Part 4, Super Mario Bros. 3 beginning to end. And so, here we are, the main event of this book, my complete, comprehensive, level by level, brick by brick playthrough of Super Mario Bros. 3. Conducted and chronicled over a period of 3 months, primarily in the evening, between April and June of 2012, given that video games are, above all else, an interactive medium. Both the dates and were worthy of mention.
Is this like an episode of Law and Order? This case takes place between the hours between January 19th and January 25th.
I have no great artistic rationale for why I choose to begin writing up my playthrough tonight. Morning, technically, as it's 2:30 a.m. at present, but I have never been able to accept darkness and nighttime as not being one and the same. I am here, that is to say, my bedroom where the Wii is kept, because the wind and rain outside have inspired our family dog, Sprocket, to behave in the manner one expects of a dog during such weather, rendering work conditions untenable in my usual office, also known as the living room after everyone
Oh
else
my
is asleep.
god, he has
And
an
so,
office
my
like
thinking-
DSP has an office. So, even... How thick is this book? This book is 200 pages. This book is 200 pages. It just
Yes,
feels like
if I'm to
more.
move my workspace to my room anyway, it's as good a time as any to stop procrastinating on this Super Mario Bros. 3 inches project. Thus, here I am. Here we are. Pathetic excuse for an air conditioner rattling in the background. Bedtime cocktail of Jack Daniels, Captain Morgan and Schweppes at my side. Room lit only by the glows from the television and from my laptop. So, we begin.
That is literally the most depressing sight ever. This fucking, like, 35-year-old man-child playing Super Mario Brothers 3 in his parents' house, in his office, in their living room, which he calls an office. So he's sitting there drinking in his parents' basement with soda covering the thing. Like, look, even when we get to the fucking game, there's still just, like, a page of him bitching about the air conditioner.
Mario Bros. 3's title screen opens with a silent animation, utilizing sprites from the game, and contains a plethora of visual details as subtle clues to the game to come. We see Mario and Luigi reverted once more to red and green palette swap copies of one another after having appeared as unique sprites in Super Mario Bros. 2 inches, a set of enemy object sprites from the game, and our first glimpse at the new mechanics of shell grabbing and flight via the raccoon powers granted by the leaf. The title screen also introduces the odd stagecraft motif that recurs throughout the game, the graphics suggesting that the game's action is taking place as a kind of theatrical production. The animation is preceded by a huge red curtain being raised, and the oddly textured fauna in the background casts a solid black shadow on a cream-colored sky backdrop. The glowing number 3 casts a shadow too, in the shape of the all-important Tanuki, as though we're looking not at a video game abstraction of a natural world but at theatrical scenery. Mario even exits the sequence by pausing to dash behind an object, a skill, which is itself a clue to one of the game's more important secrets. World 1, Grassland.
What the fuck? Exits the sequence by pausing to dash behind an object. The shape of...
World 1, Grassland SMV3 is the first Mario game to feature a world map, with all levels and paths laid out in overview. The map's theme music is a jaunty little toe-tapper, the easygoing jam-style music that was the
jaunty little
NES Mario
toe-tapper.
titles. Appropriately, the anthropomorphic bushes dotting the landscape dance in time to it. 6 levels are visible, at the time a surprising break from the 3 levels and a boss level structure of previous games in the series, plus 2 mushroom houses, a spade panel, a hammer brother on patrol, and 2 castles. One small and located at midday, and the other large and highlighted by a comic strip word balloon calling for help. From the game's instruction booklet, we have already been informed the scenario. Bowser's 7 evil children, the Koopalings, have stolen magic wands from 7 kings of 7 kingdoms, and we are to retrieve them. Clearly, that larger castle belongs to said king, and is our destination level 1-1. The first level of a Mario game is traditionally designed to teach you by trial and error how the rest of the game is to be played. Shigeru Miyamoto is said to have postponed the design of the first game's level 1-1 until the team built the rest of them, so they would know what skills it needed to impart, and to highlight what new has come to pass since last you visited the Mushroom Kingdom.
Okay, that was like the first interesting piece of information. That is actually kind of interesting that they did the tutorial stage last. That makes sense, though.
You then encounter 4 question blocks. The 4th contains the mushroom to become Super, or Big Mario, and get your first glimpse at a new variation on a classic enemy. A piranha plant that spits fireballs? Madness. Actually, it's called a Venus fire trap. Our introduction to SMB3's recurring penchant for puns. You also encounter your first chance to try a new form of enemy-object interaction, picking up the shell of the first Koopa Troopa you encounter and using it to whack a question block situated on the ground, the first instance of such block placement in the series history. Providing you are still Big Mario at this point, the block will yield a super leaf, and you will become the iconic Raccoon Mario for the first time. The tail of the tail. The English translations of the game call this form Raccoon Mario, but in the original Japanese the tail and ears are specified as those of a tanuki, a raccoon-like animal, also called a raccoon dog, common in Japan and significant to Shinto folklore. We'll discuss them in more detail when we come to a different power-up that the English translation does preserve as the tanuki suit. Raccoon Mario marks the first time a Mario power-up fundamentally changed the way a player interacts with the game world, as opposed to simply granting projectiles like the Fire Flower or invincibility like Starman. You now have a close-range attack, smacking the enemy with your tail, and can flap said tail to slow your descent after a jump. And, of course, you can fly, an action which the game's ingeniously subtle level design encourages you to try.
Ingeniously subtle level design. I thought we were past the, didn't we already have a whole, like, chapter where he described all this shit? Why are we talking about it again?
I still remember what a thrill it was to pull it off the first time. The game brilliantly understanding how much more satisfying it is having to get a running start to execute the move. You'll find hovering blocks, smiling clouds, and a 1-up, extra life for your trouble. Back down below, the familiar paratroopers, wing troopers, make their return to the series, and after traversing a pair of pits and 2 more plant-inhabiting pipes you come upon a stack of bricks that, when struck by a well-tossed shell, produce a P-switch, red, big blue button, which, when pressed, briefly transforms all bricks in the area into coins. An effect which will form the basis of more elaborate puzzles in levels to come. A few more jumps, a few more enemies, and the level.
I thought this was brick by brick. What? I want to know how he made those jumps. I want to talk. Who are the other enemies?
Bowser's minions have developed new strains since
I want to know.
Them, and that the ability to fly under the right circumstances means that the sky beyond the visible screen may hold secrets of its own. The level itself holds quick sonic secrets, as well. The stage motif from the title screen is here repeated, with the large colored blocks casting shadows and seemingly bolted the backdrop, and the jarring transition into a stark black shadow space to mark the end goal. You may also take note of the lone white platform among the other more colorful examples. Should you choose to crouch down on it for a few seconds, Mario will actually fall into the backdrop and be able to move behind the scenery, a graphical trick glimpsed on the intro and soon to become quite vital level 1 to 2 back when this game was new. The first big surprise about 1 to 2 was that it had different music than 1-1. Traditionally, Mario games had only 3 or 4 main themes: Overworld, Underworld, Boss, Final Boss. SMB1 also had an underwater theme. Commonplace today, to be sure, but in 1989 a tantalizing glimpse at just how far SMB3 was going to push the NES's hardware in the pursuit of variety for its own sake. This is also the first appearance of inclined planes in the series, the first time Mario walks up or down a sloped hill as opposed to hopping up blocks arranged as steps. Should you attempt to crouch on a particularly steep slope, one is immediately provided. Following a Goomba producing horizontal pipe, Mario will slide down the hill on his bum, the visual effect of which still induces me to smile to this day. This, I think, is the secret to the character's enduring appeal, especially to each new generation of children. The sneaky sense of Mario's adventures, however perilous, are as much a game to him as they are to you. Incidentally, if you've kept or reacquired your raccoon tail here, the second of the Goomba producing pipes is your first big chance to pull off the classic Mario Infinite 1-up trick by jumping on enemies one after another without touching the ground in between. The points awarded increase with each kill until they begin to automatically award an extra life. Using the endless supply of Goombas, proper timing in the raccoon tail to slow your descent, it's possible to rack up nearly limitless 1-ups here, and you will need them. Over the next rise,
George R. R. Martin writing a Let's Play of Dark Souls with more sex and food actually sounds much better than this.
A row of coins placed curiously adjacent to it. Directly below, 2 bricks. Does one brick contain a P-switch? It does. Might the P-switch turn coins to bricks as it previously turned bricks to coins, thus creating a platform by which to reach the pipe? It might indeed, or, if able, you can just fly up there. Among the greatest virtues of SMB3 is that there is seldom only one way to solve the puzzle.
It's like Mass Effect. It's brilliant.
And our reintroduction to a remixed version of the
greatest game ever
from SMB1. Beyond that, your first chance to try out the music blocks, white boxes adorned with musical notes which bounds like springboard when landed upon and can add on to your jump. Beyond that, victory. The road diverges. The completion of level 1 to 2 reveals another series redefining moment for Mario history.
No, I'm playing with my water bottle. I'm not cleaning dishes.
Apart from warp zones, the games had always progressed with rigid linearity. Now, here, the world map offers multiple paths. You can go to level 1 to 3 or level 1 to 4, both of which are effectively blocking your path to the first of those mushroom houses. You can even go right down to that strange spade marker, on your way to wait. What's this? You can just go right into that fortress. What new devilry is at work here? I'm trying in vain to recall what my choice was when I first played the game those many years ago. What sort of child had I been? Cautious and linear-minded enough to insist on going ahead to 1 to 3? Daring enough to defy the gods of numerical sequence and skip to 1 to 4? Or did I summon the nice suicidal bravery to march straight into the fortress?
There's suicidal bravery to fucking listen to this bullshit.
The clear choice is to go to 1-3, but I'd like to think the Bob of 1989, flush with the thrill of the game in and of itself, thought to make the bolder choice. Level 1-3 1 to 3 is a strange-looking level, especially if you take flight and discover an essentially empty yet vast and traversable sky. It's also short and flat, with only one new enemy, a boomerang brother, which means that unless the wandering hammer brother from the map screen made his way into your path already, you'll be encountering this new mutation before the classic variety, and only one new.
No, I've been deleting pages.
With wooden blocks will
No, like I've been deleting pages as we go, so we're like a lot further than that. Like yeah, so this is Natural Reader. So yeah, don't worry, we're a lot further than that. Let's see here. Oh my god, is he actually gonna like give a day-by-day update? Let's look at this.
Tuesday, April 24th, 2012, it's 4 a.m. I should be asleep. The better to wake at a reasonable hour and get day work out of the way. I did a 3,000 calories routine at the gym today thanks to the welcome distraction of a DVD full of old Transformers cartoons. And it felt good enough. I'd like to repeat the process today if more vital commitments can be dispensed with in a timely fashion. But it felt like I'd be getting off on the wrong foot for there to be a day-long gap in this project right off the bat. Also, I really did want to get back in and play through at least level 1 to 4. Good video games are addictive like that, and good Mario games are practically crystal meth in that regard. So yes, one more level. Just one more level before bed. I try not to imagine I'm 8 years old again, begging that same question of my mother as I now beg it of myself. Games within games, the Mushroom House now open to me. I choose to enter there before my next official level. This is the first shop mechanic in a Mario game, though it reigns more like a game of chance. Toad presents me with 3 treasure chests, and I can only pick one. My prize is a mushroom, which goes down into an inventory menu you can use to save items and juice yourself up before heading into a level, a feature I'd like to see make a full comeback in the modern iterations of the series. My appetite for gambling now whet, I opt to pop down into the spade panel, another game of chance, before the level. The cartoon renderings of Mario and Toad here are an amusing reminder of how straight-up fat Mario used to be rendered. The modern Mario is round-bodied in a Mickey Mouse sort of way, but 80s Mario was visibly obese. The game is a horizontal slot machine, your goal being to form a complete picture of either a star man, mushroom, or flower for one-ups. I get 2 pieces of the star before blowing it on the bottom row. I tell myself it's the screwdriver I've been nursing, as opposed to the loss of my gaming reflexes with age level 1 to 4 another level. Another Mario history first, an auto-scrolling level. As though traversing a series of sky-bound platforms beset by enemies wasn't maddening enough, the screen continuously moves from right to left on its own, forcing you to move at a pace that once upon a time felt unnaturally hurried for a Mario game. Previously, your only incentive not to lollygag was traditionally the time clock. I remember perishing right away here on my first try back in '89, having not yet realized that the non-stationary wooden long blocks drop away when you jumped on them. I remember there's a one-up in the first blocks you can hit from beneath but failed to acquire it. Blame the boost.
Okay, I am gonna do like I'm gonna do a bunch more videos on MovieBob. I just wanted to take a look at his book and see if it's as bad as I thought. Okay, this is unfucking bearable. He did it though. He delivered. He did do a brick by brick analysis. Oh my god, like
It's just one of them this time, the classic mallet-tossing variety, and his defeat earns me a Starman as a prize. Wednesday, April 25th, another late night, another long day. Vovo, my grandmother on my father's side, was hospitalized again yesterday. An ongoing, although, I am assured, not at this point serious problem that has almost become routine, though not enough to keep me from feeling uncertain. It's not lost on me that I'm currently coping with this and other uneasy aspects of my life precisely the same way I did as a child, playing a video game. Playing this video game, level 1 to 5, the entry into this level never fails to make me smile, while every other level of a Mario game up to this point, save the famous mid-air fall cold open from Super Mario Bros. 2, has opened with Mario's feet planted squarely on terra firma. When 1 to 5 opens, I find myself sliding down the cliff into a cave, coming to rest at the lip of a subterranean pool and plowing through 4 buzzy beetles, smooth-shelled, fireproof turtle-like foes that have been with the series from the beginning, as I go. It's a fun pace, and once upon a time I was blown away that Mario began to swim upon sliding into that pool rather than dying instantly, which is what hitting water in anything other than a designated swimming level.
Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna go ahead. This is unbearable. Oh my god. Okay, so I don't know if I really want to continue this. I have to go to bed because I have like a serious adult job I work. But you know what? I don't think it's... How much is left in this book? I don't think there's that much left. I think there's only like 100 pages. Okay, yeah, there's only like 140 pages left. Okay, so I'm going to cut it now, but we're going to look at this more later. So anyways, night guys. I'll talk to you some other time.